stick around to see how I turn these parts from my junk bin into this awesome custom-built robot. That's coming up next on Making with Mark. The starting point for this build is actually a small engine fuel filter. Before I can get started working on the body and using that filter though, I need to go ahead and make the robot's head. So I start off by cutting out some little squares of styrene sheet. And for the main part of the head, I'm using this plumbing nut. It has some grooves on the side, and I just thought it would make a really cool looking robot head. So I apply some glue after scuffing up the top and bottom, and then just glue that nut onto the square of styrene sheeting. And a little bit of baking powder locks that in. Then I can come behind with a pair of scissors. I'm just going to rough cut the shape. And then I'll finish that up with my sanding wheel on the rotary tool. It'll do a nice job of getting a good, clean, smooth edge. I go ahead and glue the bottom strip of styrene. And now it's time to glue the head onto the body. So on top of this fuel filter, I added just a regular water bottle lid, added lots of glue, and then I just put the head in place, make sure it's secure. And I went ahead and reinforced that connection with some additional glue and some baking powder. I used my pipe cutter with some PEX piping. Just cut a little ring, and this is going to be for the part that goes on the bottom side of the robot, sort of hold the legs. So I apply some glue, go ahead and position that bottom ring, and that's what I've come up with so far. I added some plastic gears to both sides of this ring, and this will give me something to attach the leg pieces to. And it'll also give a lot of detail. I really love using these little wheels. It's amazing how they paint up and how you can add some dry brushing to them at the end. For the robot's feet, I actually started off with a little different prototype and then cut it down to make 2 feet. It was going to be a single foot with some wheels added to it. But after looking at it, I decided that I liked this idea much better, so I made 2 identical feet, and this is all made out of more of that sheet styrene. And then it's on to figuring out how to attach the feet to the body. So for these legs, I'm using some plastic washers and some more sheet styrene, and I really want to create this sort of lever effect. So there'll be a piece that attaches to the foot, and then another piece that sort of acts like the upper leg that'll attach to the body. So using the styrene and then my sanding wheel, able to come up with a pretty cool looking lower foot. To add in more detail, I add another washer to the inside of the foot, and then this little piece of plastic tubing. It'll give some offset and just more detail, and it'll look more realistic. Add some glue to that inside tube, and then go ahead and mount the lower leg piece. And this is what I've come up with so far. I always like to look at the model several times through the build just to make sure things are staying proportioned correctly. And in this case, I decided that it needed a little bit more detail. It needed an upper leg in order for this action to be accurate. So I cut out some more little strips of styrene, glued that on, and I was pretty happy with the way the legs and the feet were coming together. Just a few more little details, some more of these gears, and now it's time to move on to the arms. For the arms, I use more of the plastic tubing, I use some flex pieces of drinking straws and more gears. And for the robot's hands, I'm drawing some inspiration from one of my favorite childhood toys. It was from Tandy, and it's called the Armatron. So if you've never seen one of these before, you have some controls that can move this arm up and down. And at the end of the arm is this awesome clamp. And so I tried to recreate that, and you'll see I sort of copy some of the colors from the Armatron as well. And here I'm taping up a front section of the robot. This inner filter is really cool, and I don't want to lose that in the final painting, in the final result here. So decided to tape that up, and that way it'll be protected whenever I do the prime and paint coats. So I add some final details, some little necklace beads and various other little bits and pieces. And we're looking good so far. And I think it's almost time for the magic to happen. So we're going to go ahead and apply a coat of primer, and then we can see this robot come together as one. So after primer, just as expected, looks really cool. So I can't wait to get this final color on. So I'm going to go with a matte yellow finish. This is a spray paint. And here you can see after a good coat of the matte yellow, I can go ahead and start to peel this tape off. And this is very satisfying seeing how this is going to look. You get the contrast of the yellow, and then you get this awesome looking filter on the inside. Just kind of a sneak peek to the inside, the inner workings of the robot here. So I'm really glad that I captured that, and it's going to really shine through in the end product. I decided that the robot needed a little bit more detail, so I took a piece of wire and actually some necklace string, and I made this cool looking vacuum cleaner tube. And so I added this attachment where he can clamp it with his arm, and you've got the vacuum cleaner nozzle there on the end. I just used a drinking straw to make that. Added a washer, this piece of plastic rod, and then fit it into the hand so he's able to hold on to it. And then I just sort of worked with that tubing or vacuum cleaner hose, if you will, and figured out where that should mount onto the back of the robot. So I drilled a hole, a little bit of super glue, and then I reinforced that with some more baking powder just to hold it. Also reinforced the joints at the clamp. I thought that turned out pretty neat. So now we have an industrial vacuum cleaning robot. And all he needs is just some final details. So decided to go ahead and paint the hose and attachment black in this dark gray color. And then I just touched off a few other bits and pieces around the robot. Went in with some silver, and then finished this whole thing up with some weathering and distressing. I was very happy with the way he turned out. If you enjoyed this video, check out these others that I think you'll also enjoy.